My business partner stood up at our firm's 10th anniversary dinner and told 200 guests that the award-winning hospital wing design everyone was celebrating had been his idea from day one. I sat 3 tables back, watching him hold up blueprints I had drafted alone over 6 months of 16-hour days, while he thanked his vision for our biggest contract ever. I didn't stand up and correct him that night. That was the mistake he never recovered from. My name is Nadia Farrow. I'm 41, a licensed architect, and co-founder of a firm called Farrow Bell Design. My partner, Colin Bell, and I built the company together 11 years ago out of a converted garage, splitting everything 50-50, on paper and in practice, for almost a decade. I have a 14-year-old son, Owen, and a mortgage on a house I designed myself. What I stood to lose that year wasn't just a project credit, it was my name on a body of work I'd spent a decade earning, and with it, my ability to ever bid for major public contracts under my own reputation again. The signs had been there for months before that dinner, and I'd explained each one away. Colin had started scheduling client calls for the pediatric hospital wing project, without looping me in, telling me afterward it was just logistics. He'd asked our junior drafter, Priya, to email him renderings directly, instead of through our shared project folder, which she mentioned to me almost apologetically one Friday, unsure if it mattered. A city procurement officer once referred to Colin's design team in an email meant for both of us, and Colin laughed it off as a typo. I found a printed set of my structural drawings in his office, with his initials penciled into the corner. Faint, easy to miss unless you were looking for the shape of your own handwriting being erased. And there was a voicemail, saved by accident when Priya's phone butt dialed me, of Colin telling someone that Nadia does the technical work, but I sell it, so it's fair I take the lead credit. At the dinner, standing at the podium under our firm's 10-year retrospective banner, Colin held up the same blueprints I'd drafted through the coldest months of that winter, and told the room the pediatric wing had come from a sketch he'd made on a napkin. I remember the specific silence in my chest. Not shock exactly, more like a lock quietly clicking shut somewhere behind my ribs. I smiled for the photo afterward. I even let a client shake my hand and say congratulations to Colin near my shoulder. 2 days later, I learned this wasn't just a stolen credit line at a dinner. It was a plan. Our firm's operating agreement required both partners' signatures to bid on contracts above a certain threshold, a clause we'd written together in year 1 to protect exactly this kind of situation. When I pulled our shared drive to prepare a routine tax document, I found a submission to the State Architectural Licensing Board, filed 6 weeks earlier, listing Colin as sole principal architect of record for the pediatric wing. My signature was on it. I had never signed it. The looped C in my last name curved the wrong direction, a detail my actual signature never has. This wasn't ego anymore. If the state board accepted that filing, Colin would hold sole professional liability and sole credit for the largest public project our firm had ever built, and my name would quietly disappear from a decade of work I'd poured myself into. I didn't confront him. I went quiet instead, and I went to work. I pulled every version history from our shared design software, which timestamps every drafting session, down to the minute, proving I had logged over 400 hours on the pediatric wing to Colin's 11. I requested a certified copy of my actual notarized signature from an earlier filing for comparison. I called the notary listed on the fraudulent board submission, who confirmed she'd stamped a document that week for someone she couldn't clearly identify, working off a rushed glance at an ID. I saved Priya's voicemail, unedited, along with her written statement that she'd been asked twice to route my renderings through Colin alone. I brought everything to an old law school friend, Denise, now a licensing attorney, who reviewed it in one sitting and used the word fraud without hesitation. I became 2 people that month. One who reviewed budget spreadsheets with Colin over coffee and asked polite questions about the next bid. One who was quietly building a file, time-stamped and indexed, that would end a decade of borrowed credit. 3 weeks later, Colin got careless. At a city council meeting to formally award us a second, even larger contract for a regional library expansion, he stood at the podium in front of council members, city staff, and 2 local reporters, and stated on the record that he was the sole architect of record for our recent hospital work, citing it as the reason the city should trust him personally with the library project. He had no idea the state licensing board had already opened a preliminary file on our firm 3 days earlier, triggered by a routine audit flag on his submission, and that Denise had already requested the full record be reviewed, alongside my drafting logs. I didn't wait for a quieter moment. When the council opened the floor for public comment, I walked to the podium beside him, laid a folder on the table, and said evenly that I needed to correct the record before the city relied on it. I stated that the design software logs, available for the board's review, showed 400 hours of my drafting time against 11 of his, that the licensing filing bearing my forged signature was under active investigation, and that I had a notarized statement confirming the signature wasn't mine. I didn't raise my voice once. "This isn't a partnership disagreement anymore," I said. "This is a false filing with a state board, and it's already documented." Colin's face went the color of the blueprints behind him. A council member asked, quietly, whether the city should pause the library award pending the board's review. The chair agreed on the spot. Within 3 weeks, the state board completed its inquiry, found the filing fraudulent, and required Colin to submit a corrected record, listing me as co-principal architect of record on the pediatric wing, matching the actual drafting history. Our operating agreement's fraud clause, the one we'd written together in year 1, gave me the right to dissolve the partnership with cause, and I exercised it. Colin lost the library contract entirely, since the city declined to award new public work to a firm under active board review. He kept his license, barely, with a formal reprimand on permanent record. Priya stayed on with me as I relaunched under my own name, Faro Design. She got the promotion I'd been meaning to give her for a year. Colin has called twice since the split, both times to suggest we let bygones be bygones for the sake of future bids. I haven't returned either call, not out of anger, but because I finally understand that a decade of shared work doesn't obligate me to share credit with someone who tried to erase mine. I still design hospital wings. I still work 16-hour days when a project needs it, but every filing has my actual signature on it now, and I check the board's public record myself, every quarter, whether anyone asks me to or not. If you'd sat in that room watching someone take credit for your work in front of 200 people, would you have corrected them on the spot, or waited quietly until you had the proof to end it for good?